We've known for a few weeks that Michigan wasn't going to the playoffs, but playing Alabama in the ReliaQuest Bowl wasn't exactly on the radar. Will it be a primetime rematch or an afternoon beatdown? Does it even matter? Coming up next. Welcome to the Point a Minute Show on Michigan football at the voice of college football, where we average one outstanding point for every minute of video. My name is Cliff. His name is Mac. Let's get into it. Okay, so we all know Michigan's season this year has been a roller coaster ride. They look disorganized, undisciplined, and at times appeared to not even understand the rules. But they did win 7 games. They beat Michigan State and number 2 Ohio State in a stunner, so that's pretty cool.
Hey.
And this is going to seem like ancient history, Mac, but do you remember that at the beginning of the season, Michigan was ranked number 9?
Oh, they were, weren't they?
They were up there.
Oh, geez.
They stayed in the rankings for a couple of weeks before they dropped out. Since then, they've played 6 ranked teams and only beat 2 of them. One of those ranked teams was number 2 Ohio State. It was a nail-biter, but Michigan made it 4 in a row. Go Blue. But just like they had the rematch with Washington, which didn't go well, they now have a rematch with the Alabama Crimson Tide. Last time it was a nail-biter too, but Michigan was ranked number 1 and Alabama was number 4 back then. This time, Alabama is 13 and Michigan is not ranked. Michigan has also seen a lot of players enter the portal this week. Now, Steve Dace at Michigan Podcast posted this on X. He said, Alabama will name the score in this meaningless scrimmage. How Michigan fans respond, we're going to have way more opt-outs, will be an intelligence test. Some fools will be outing themselves as such on this app in a few weeks. Okay, I don't want to be one of those fools, but we got to talk about the game, so he's probably right, but I prefer to be optimistic rather than realistic most of the time. So, Mac, before we get into the stats, I got to tell you, and maybe I've told you this before, but when I was a kid, the bowl game was just an extra game you got at the end of the season if you played well enough to get one. It was just, bonus football in December. It was fun. It was different environment. It was different teams, places you weren't used to. And they were just fun. Like I said, are we not allowed to just have fun with this bowl game anymore?
No.
Why not?
Football's not fun. Why would football be fun? This is for pride. This is for, if your team wins, it's because you're better than the people who root for the other team. If your team loses, it's because you personally have failed as a human being and should probably just go yeet yourself off the nearest cliff. That's just what college sports is.
Why is it always me? I don't understand.
I get it. That's funny. But I'm talking about a real problem of people whose mental health revolves around the performance of their football team. And they're absolutely right for that, because this isn't fun. This is do or die. And if your team loses, I'm not going to say it.
All right. Yes. Zero fun, sir. Okay.
Zero fun. No fun.
Well, all right, fine. Let's get into some of the stats on this game and try to figure out what kind of a beatdown this is going to be and for who. So Michigan, Alabama. So the season record for Michigan is 7-5. The season record for Alabama is 9-3. Passing yards for Michigan, 1,603 passing yards over the season. Alabama, 2,881. Michigan's rushing yards, 1,932. Alabama's 2,194. So not too much of a difference in rushing yards over, 12 games. Passing yards allowed, Michigan had 1,112. Alabama had 1,686 passing yards allowed. So Michigan did a little bit better on the pass rush. Rushing yards allowed, however, Michigan allowed 2,620. Alabama allowed 2,294. So Alabama was able to stop the run a little better than Michigan was. Points per game, Michigan scored 22 on average. Alabama scored 35 on average. Points allowed per game, this is a little bit closer. Michigan's at 20. Alabama's at 17. So Michigan looks to be, I wanted to say it first. I wanted to say straight up outclassed. Maybe it's not as bad as it sounds, although Alabama seems to be winning in all of the stats here, especially winning in particular with 2 more wins than Michigan. Michigan has also had, 10 or 11 players now opt out or hit the transfer portal. Actually, I don't know if they opt out. If they hit the transfer portal, are they automatically opted out? They're still on the team, aren't they?
No, they're still. Yeah, I think they're still on the team. So I
So
think
how
they can
many
still
players
play.
have actually opted out?
As far as I know, nobody has opted out of the bowl game just yet.
Okay, so we've got transfers, but not necessarily any opt-outs yet. We're still waiting to
Well,
hear on that.
probably Colston Loveland and Will Johnson will be opting out. But I can't honestly think of anybody else who would probably want to opt out.
Well, they've got a couple of weeks to figure that out.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I mean, I want to say this. This is my optimism. Michigan stunned the Buckeyes. Can they stun the Tide?
This is the first thing I was thinking when I saw this pop up. I was just like, Alabama, okay. I understand they're not really doing so hot this year, but let's be honest, they probably should have gotten in the CFP over SMU. I think Alabama's got a better strength of record. They've got a better overall strength of schedule. They probably have better quality losses. Actually, they do have better quality losses, but that's a really stupid metric to measure anything by, and whoever suggested it should be tarred and feathered. That's an overreaction. But either way, I mean,
it's football. We live for the overreaction.
That's fair. Alabama isn't having a good year by Alabama standards, but they're leagues above Michigan right now. So does Michigan have a chance?
I know. I want to say no. I want to say this is just going to be a beatdown, but then I keep thinking that's what we said about Ohio State.
I mean, okay, like you think about the Ohio State game and everybody's like, okay, Ryan Day has a Michigan problem. Like Michigan lives rent free in Ryan Day's head, and they do. But even still, his team they've got basically, I think every position except for the D line, they have talent that's better than Michigan. They still should have beaten Michigan, and probably by a couple scores. I don't care how freaked out Ryan Day is of Michigan. Like, really, it was the easiest adjustment that they needed to make is just stop running the ball and throw it more. And I understand there were questions about Will Howard's health. Did he have a concussion? He wasn't playing great. I mean, he did throw 2 interceptions. I mean, it's not great. But even still, I just feel like, you've got your playmakers on the outside. You've got to get them the ball. So I guess my point here is that, even with Michigan living rent-free in Ryan Day's head, how do you lose to Michigan with a $20 million some odd dollar roster? Like this is just insane. And so all of that is to say that I think Ohio State, they've got a Michigan problem. Ryan Day has a Michigan problem, but like Michigan still went down there and held their $20 million roster to 10 points. Like, what? So can they beat Alabama? Sure. Why not? Literally crazier things have happened.
Well, we always talk about the transitive property. You can't use the transitive property in football, but it's not as if Sharon Moore is completely unfamiliar with Kalen DeBoer because he coached Washington last year. So is it possible he's going to know some of Kalen DeBoer's tricks?
I mean, maybe. Yeah. I mean, they've got plenty of time to prepare for Alabama, and yeah, I mean, he knows Kalen DeBoer a little bit. He's probably seen some of the tape. And Jalen Milroe, he's got 15 touchdowns, but he's actually thrown more interceptions this year than Davis Warren has. So, I mean, and maybe if Davis Warren had started every game, Davis Warren would have more. But you got to think, how many interceptions were there against Texas? And he threw 2 against Ohio State. I mean, come on, like. It wasn't good. It wasn't a great season for Davis Warren, but, credit to him for showing up and trying his best every week. And Jalen Milroe, he's a great player. He's really good at what he does. He's currently leading in rushing for Alabama too, and he's got almost 2,700 yards passing. But they have complained that Jalen Milroe can be kind of hit or miss sometimes. I mean, sometimes he makes a beautiful play that you're like, how in the world is this kid human? And then the next play he'll throw an interception where you're just like, even I saw that coming from a mile away, and I need glasses to see properly. I don't know. Maybe he does too. But in terms of whether or not Sharon Moore is going to be ready for Alabama, I don't know how one could say with Michigan's current roster that they're actually ready for Alabama. I don't think that they're ready for Alabama. I think that they're going into this game thinking, okay, there's really one way this game can go for us, and it either goes that way or we get blown out. And I mean, that's just how it is. There's a very narrow path to victory for Michigan. I honestly can't even really tell you what that is. I think that it requires probably something in the neighborhood of getting 3 or 4 turnovers. I think you gotta make Jalen Milroe throw the ball a lot, and he's probably going to need to throw a couple of interceptions. The defense is going to need to carry this game for the entire team because Michigan's offense is not putting up points against this Alabama defense. Actually, let me check some of their numbers real quick. Yeah, points against 17. I don't know. I mean, I think Ohio State statistically is technically better, but again, you have to wonder, is that the Ryan Day Michigan effect, or was Michigan's offense actually able to do something against the Ohio State defense a little bit there? Because they had a couple of really good third down conversions. And, I understand this whole thing, this rambling that I'm doing at this point is kind of a mess, but it's basically all to say that there's a narrow path to victory. And if somehow, some way the game follows that narrow path to victory, yes, Michigan can win. And yes, the only reason I'm saying that is because they happened to beat Ohio State, but it happened. So why can't it happen against Alabama?
The only thing I was thinking of is that Michigan doesn't have the drive to beat Alabama that they have to beat Ohio State. I mean, there's that whole emotional impact of that game that maybe isn't there with Alabama. But whether this is a meaningless game, a meaningless bowl game, or an off-season scrimmage, like Steve Day says, is there something here for Michigan to prove or even build on? And actually, what does it mean if they win?
It's weird because, for 2025, I feel like they're bringing in almost an entirely new team. You've got a bunch of kids hitting the transfer portal already. I think Tyler Morris is hitting the transfer portal. I know Andrew Gentry's hitting the transfer portal. There are a lot of players hitting the transfer portal for Michigan this year, and so it kind of makes you feel like this year is there's going to be so much turnover that it's kind of like this team, however this team performs in this bowl game, really has no effect going into 2025. And I'm still kind of that opinion. I know a lot of people are saying that Bryce Underwood is going to start day one for Michigan. And I don't know if he is. People are throwing around the term, generational. I know that term is overused. Man, I'm sorry. Words are killing me today. Jeez. I know that term is kind of overused, but that's kind of how they're describing Bryce Underwood. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if Jaden Davis has made any improvements. I know they were saying that he needed to improve a little bit. It's so for me, I'm looking at this game like just go out there and have fun, because I don't know how much of it really means anything for the players per se, because I don't know how many of these players are going to be on the team next year. And so there's not really a lot of a chance for development. The good news is that for Sharon Moore and the coaching staff, he's got some more time to work with the team and figure out how he wants to put his system in place, because they actually have 4 weeks to train for a bowl game, 4 weeks to get some practice in and really figure out what they want to do. And maybe something like that carries over to 2025. So honestly, I would say throw the kitchen sink at Alabama and just see what happens. I mean, just go out there, have some fun, scheme up some weird stuff and see if you can beat them. And if you can, then bring that game plan over to 2025, because if it worked against Alabama, even with their off year, it's going to work against a lot of the teams that Michigan's playing next year. The problem is that Michigan's bringing in a whole brand new team next year, and they've still got a relatively difficult schedule. So I don't know. I guess we'll just have to see.
Yeah, I'm really open to just treat this like I did the Ohio State game and just sort of kick back and relax and enjoy some extra football. I don't know how Michigan's going to do in this, but lest any of our Buckeye fans think we're trying to deflect, and you may have already answered this question, so if there's anything else you want to throw in here, what are you hoping to see in this game? What would you like to see Michigan do to actually prove what you just said, that they're looking forward to next year?
So I can't really think off the top of my head of any defensive players that have hit the transfer portal for Michigan as of right now. So with that being said, I'd actually like to see how the defense does against Jalen Milroe, because, I mean, obviously they played in the Rose Bowl last year and they had Jalen Milroe pretty well bottled up. I mean, they did very well against him. So can they do, with the personnel that we have right now, can they do that again? Can Sharon Moore, can Wink Martindale scheme something up for this dual threat quarterback and, keep him in the box and force him to throw and maybe make some bad decisions and actually keep Michigan in this game? I'm really curious about that. I think when it comes down to it, it's like I said before, I think it really comes down to scheming. And what I want to see come out of this game is the coaches really figure out something that solidifies their scheme, because they figured out something defensively with Ohio State. Now, what can they do against, Jalen Milroe, and I know Will Howard is a mobile quarterback for sure. Jalen Milroe, I feel like, is a more mobile quarterback, and he's a big guy too. So I want to see what they can do to bottle him up. And if they can, again, that's stuff that they can take into 2025. And that's going to be a huge thing for them to build on schematically. Even if they have brand new players, at least they can say, like, look, we have a proof of concept. And we took players who, quite frankly, aren't necessarily as good a raw talent as these players coming in this new class. And they still were able to hold Alabama to whatever points, or they were still able to hold Ohio State to 10 points. That's an opportunity right there, is for them to put together something that just kind of shows a proof of concept to future recruiting classes. And so far, that seems to be working pretty well with the class that they've got coming in, which is ranked number 9 overall. Really, really good class with Bryce Underwood and Andrew Babaloa and Andrew Marsh and Nathaniel Marshall. So can they keep that going with 2026 then? That would be the interesting thing to see come out of this game. Now, if they get blown out and they just look totally lost, that's another thing. So don't get blown out, and let's try and figure out something schematically that we can take into 2025.
All right, well, let's leave it right there. We'll look forward to the ReliaQuest Bowl with Michigan and Alabama. What do you guys think about what we think? Leave a comment below and let us know. You can also find us on X. My handle is Dog Team Rivalry. That's DAWG Team Rivalry. And Mac is Big Ten Team Rivalry, which is B1G Team Rivalry. Stop by and give us a follow. If you want more great analysis on college football, check out all the shows right here on Michigan Football at the Voice of College Football. You can also catch Mac and I one more time live Wednesday night for the College Football Playoff Bracket Extravaganza with the Big Ten Brady Bunch, Wednesday night, 8 p.m. on YouTube. Check it out. Mac, take us out.
This is Michigan Football at the Voice of College Football.